Hello and welcome everyone, this is Type V3 and let's welcome Yasogami's Steel Council President to the stage, Labrys. Done up by Max Factory under their Figma series, this is the flagship character from the video game fighter Persona 4 Arena. A female robot donning a high school uniform and sections of a knight's armor? Yeah, her concept sure does sound like a mess, but in actuality, it isn't. In fact, it's a little subtle, and it's the same story when it comes to this figure's construction. Labrys is a peculiar Figma in that the strengths of her aesthetics aren't immediately apparent. Starting with the paint, the bulk of the body is a simple matte white finish. Conversely, her forearms are done in a super glossy candy red that just pops. Then there's also the silver armor plates that carry a slight blue hue to them. Add in the pattern on her kilt and the detailing on her hip joints, and suddenly the complexity of this figure becomes hugely apparent. That said, I haven't even touched upon Labrys' greatest feature, her hair. The entire ponytail is cast in an almost glass-like plastic, which has been meticulously airbrushed to give it its blue to clear gradient effect. It's incredible to see in person. From a visually technical standpoint, Labrys is the most impressive Figma I've encountered to date. She isn't without faults though. For starters, her elbow joints look awkward. Robot designs can usually get away with odd jointing issues, but I don't think that the circular disc falls quite in line with the rest of Labrys' design. There's QC issues too. The silver waist piece isn't exactly symmetrical on my copy, and there's also some sloppy paint application throughout the hair armor. Finally, her size. I just find it criminal that she's been given the smaller Figma body. Personally, I think the taller 6-inch scale would complement her character design so much more. Moving on to faces, Labrys comes with a total of 3. First is her gentle grin. While it definitely resembles the character well, there's something about it that looks ever so slightly off, although this might be because she's staring off to the left. Next is her yelling expression, which I think captures the likeness of the character best. Also included is the Shadow Labrys face, which essentially turns the figure into another character. Lastly, you get her DLC glasses, or more specifically, the visor to a knight's helmet. It's an inclusion that all fans will surely appreciate. Now, I could easily tell you that Labrys has some great Figma articulation, but there's enough different things going on with this figure that I'm going to have to go and show you all of it. For starters, we'll go with the easy things. She does have a Figma jointed head joint, so there's good range there. The hair itself also has a Figma joint that goes up, and these armor plates are on separate pieces, and you can tell these little plastic wires are kind of frail, so just be careful, and you can move it side to side. Also, these are kind of sharp, and because they're kind of glass-like, be careful with them. But that alone is pretty crazy. You probably noticed that her foot design doesn't allow for the greatest of supports, and they're not. They definitely don't. And if you put her hair up like this, she will fall back, so just keep that in mind. Shoulders are double-ended ball joints, so good range there. There is a bicep swivel there. Figma jointed for the elbow, which, you know what, it has alright range. The interesting thing, though, is that she has a forearm swivel, and this is probably to accommodate for the fact that her wrists can't swivel because of the design there. There's a hinge, but that flap keeps it from swiveling. So the upside to that is that the peg hole in there won't get worn down by the fists or the hands you choose to put in there. So that's really neat. Despite not looking like it, she does have a upper torso crunch because the joint is actually right there. And you'll notice that the peg hole for the Figma stand is here at the bottom as opposed to being at the top, which I personally like better. I hate it when these peg holes are up at the top and they're kind of hard to get to by like things like hair. There is also a waist swivel built in there, which is kind of hard to activate, but it is in there. The hip joints are interesting. They're on ball joints, and there's an inner ball joint there that allows for a swivel at the joint, but it doesn't really move that much, so thankfully the actual thigh can swivel. The knee joints are probably the most unique thing about this Figma, in that they're not Figma joints at all. Instead, you have two joints, so they're double jointed knees that you normally find on a competitor's action figure line like SH Figuarts, so really great range of motion there. And then the foot, of course, is on a ball joint. And like I said before, not very stable, but it's awesome that this figure can, with enough patience, stand on her own. And the result of all this is some really fantastic posing options. Again, I still think that if she had a larger Figma body, you could create more dynamic poses, or things would look a little more interesting. But as a whole, like, I'm just really impressed with how this one turned out. When it comes to accessories, Labrys comes packed with quite a lot. Her hand rack is fully stocked, and on it you'll find fists and dynamic fingers that should suit all your posing needs. You also get pairs of straight and angled gripping hands for use with her primary weapon, the giant double-sided axe. As far as weapons go, this one is extraordinary in both its size and construction. Unfortunately, due to its immense weight along with Labrys' shaky balance, it's almost impossible to get her to wield the axe naturally. Thankfully, Max Factory included two Figma stands, and if that wasn't enough, there's even a clip attachment to support more strenuous displays. But that's not all. The axe's staff can be entirely removed. The blades can retract, and then by plugging it all into the figure's backplate, you can give Labrys her flight mode. You even get a special set of flight hands to complete the look. Now, although the axe is Labrys' signature weapon, she's also known for something else, giving chain knuckles to anyone who breaks public order. By removing one of her forearms and attaching it to a static chain, along with its own blast effect part, you can emulate this attack. Alternatively, if the static plastic chain doesn't do it for you, then there's the option to switch it out for one with full metal links that will take on any pose you deem. And of course, you can combine the chain knuckle and the immense axe to create some devastating effects. As a final bonus, 2 sheets of plastic are included, and these are for replicating a couple of her Weaver's Art special attacks, Beast and Breaking Wheel. Now I'll admit, their purpose is hugely specific and probably confusing to those unfamiliar with the character. It's also a little strange considering Labrys' persona, Ariadne, usually summons these effects to the battlefield, so the final presentation feels incomplete. It's also worth noting that you need a Figma stand to display these, so out of the box, it's impossible to use all of Labrys' accessories simultaneously. I'll be honest, I'm a huge Persona fan, and I've always thought that Figma was one of the strongest action figure toy lines on the market. But as of late, I've become heavily jaded on both subjects. So when I say that Figma Labrys completely blew my expectations away, you know that this figure is something special. Aesthetically, she's just about perfect, and the variety of techniques used to bring out her details are phenomenal. The articulation is fantastic, and there's even newer engineered aspects found here that show promise for the future of the Figma series. I will admit I'm disappointed in her smaller stature, and that fact only stings more when you consider her higher $40 price tag, but it's easily forgiven since she makes up for it with an abundance of extras. If you're into Figmas, this is one you should already have, and for those who have yet to jump in, Labrys is the perfect place to start. Anyways, this has been Type V3. Thanks for watching, and that's really all there is to the 5th generation anti-shadow suppression weapon. Or is it? What if Yasogami school colors just aren't for you, and maybe your place is in the big city at Gekogan High?